Welcome back to the Peak Property Performance Podcast. I am your co-host, Drew Hall. And before we get to our panel today, the theme for today's show is the regression of CRE systems, the path that they've taken from operator-controlled into platform-driven ecosystems, and then ultimately into where we land today, largely where the complexity often outweighs the clarity. So real quickly, before we introduce our guest, as always, just want to remind listeners to like, subscribe, share, shout it from the mountaintops like so many of you do. It's how we're spreading the word on the PPP movement and changing an industry here. So please remember to do that. And if you think you'd provide value as a guest here, we welcome CRE thought leaders from all stages of ownership and operation. Please just reach out via LinkedIn or the PPP website itself. That's peakpropertyperformance.com. So without further ado, it's not just me as the talking head today. First, welcome our co-host, Bill Douglas. Bill, hello.
Hello. Our guest is really who's going to talk most of the time today. And today our guest is Michael Mullin. Michael, I'll read your intro, but say hello to the listeners first.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to be here.
Yes.
Whatever time it is.
I am going to tell the story real quick that you just told me. You got introduced to the trade show as the godfather of PMS. And you didn't necessarily like it, but I'm just trying to establish that you've seen it all. And that's why I'm excited about this conversation today.
Yeah, I think I've had 40 years in property management software now.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, you qualify.
So when I say you've seen the full evolution of technology inside commercial real estate, you certainly have.
Being from where we all had standalone DOS applications sitting on our desktops at the property level to .com boom and everything trying to get consolidated back to headquarters. So in theory, you could get real-time data and information. But
I'm looking forward to today's conversation about how we got here and how operators are losing more control than they realize. So rather than read the formal intro, I think we just did it. I think we should just jump right in.
Sure, great.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So, Mike, how would you say, like from your perspective, how did early systems actually serve the operators better in some ways than they do today?
Well, I think partly because everything was very centralized on that one property. So when people were using the system, all they had to do was worry about their own tenants, their own residents in those systems. They didn't have to worry about, am I in the right property? Do I have the right tenant? So the bigger it got, the more data that was in the system, the more the users had to figure out were they in the right place. It helped the property staff remain very focused on their own systems, where they could run a budget control ledger, they could do their make ready board on their system, they could do all their accounting, really built around, having an accounting system, and obviously transition to where, through some of the things we've got today, which, to doing attraction online, but doing resident portals and that kind of thing. We've gone much further than that, but back in the day it was accounting, leasing accounting, budget control ledgers, and make ready boards, all running in a DOS application on a standalone, usually on a standalone computer in their office with, green screens.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it's definitely come a long way. Multiple iterations too. And so as we think about how some things have definitely been consolidated over all this time, and certainly there's improvement to be expected in the consolidation of some of these things, but how do you think of that? Like when you think about some of the things that you've listed here already, when you think about the consolidation of those tool sets, systems, think through and tell us kind of some examples, maybe ideally, where there was not necessarily benefit, but maybe some blind spots were created along the way.
Well, I think as we came through, Y2K, and that was kind of beginning as we came through the .com bubble, and we're all looking for ways to get to more real-time data, because back in the day we would bundle up all the data off those systems, back it up onto a floppy disk, and we'd overnight the floppy disk back to headquarters where they would extract that data, put them into a reporting tool and try to get the data. So Monday morning reports became like Wednesday afternoon reports by the time they had consolidated everything and got it into a way they could present it to people. So I think moving to that consolidated internet-based system, you did get Monday morning reports on Monday morning. There was a cost associated to that, but I think one of the main ways to offset that was we were overnighting packages of data back and forth from properties throughout the week. There was usually four overnight packages a week that would go from each property back to headquarters, be the invoices, their backup data so they could do their consolidation. Those types of things were going back and forth. So much of the cost of moving to the browser-based applications was picked up by eliminating all that all those FedEx bills. And it did give people real-time data. Sometimes too much, sometimes not quite fine-tooth combed before it got there. Property people were used to their own systems where they could, they knew exactly what they were putting into those systems, and when their data was going up to corporate, they would kind of massage it and make sure it was right before they sent it off. When we went to real-time to internet-based systems, everything was real-time. So there was no massaging, there was no fixing it before it got into corporate's hands. Everything was exposed right away, which was good and bad. Sometimes made people make decisions that weren't necessarily correct, but it also made everybody start thinking about what processes can we put in place to ensure that this data is better. How do we make sure that the systems are gathering everything properly in the first place?
Well, we talk about this in the book a lot, the concept of loss of visibility, but really, and we talk about it a lot on the podcast too, more importantly, when the system owns the operator. The operator is paying for a system, but the system actually owns the operator because modern platforms often trade control for convenience.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's certainly, if you look at the kind of the three big players in this space, the MRIs, the Yardis, the Real Pages, it's an infrastructure. It's not a property management software. It's not a leasing application. You buy into the infrastructure. So everything becomes from that one vendor. And, unless you're a really big company, you're not really getting much of their bandwidth from a software development standpoint. So you're having to kind of fix yourself into their processes. How they do a guest card is how you have to start doing a guest card. And how they do a lease and the data they collect for a lease abstract on a commercial application, you have to kind of use what they say is industry standard instead of saying I want to do it differently.
We talk a lot with our clients and with prospects about you're the buyer, you should control this process. Like you shouldn't wait for the vendor to dictate the roadmap. You're writing the check, you own the roadmap, the vendor will play. Like we will play. If a client comes to us and says we want to do this for this property or we want this performance or this data, we will alter our methods to get what they want. And most vendors will do that. But where do you see operators today losing visibility that they historically have? And do you have a real example of that when a system limited decision-making ability?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an exact solution or example of that one. I think because there's so many tools out there today that we went from distributed operating systems to a centralized application, all built about kind of three vendors in their own way of doing things, to now there's been so much money invested in prop tech that it's you're back to silos of information. Certainly tool sets today with AI and whatnot, we can start bringing that together more easily, but all of a sudden you had all your leasing was in one system and all your maintenance was in another system, and not necessarily did all this stuff talk to each other. So you don't have the clean views you might have had in a single operating system. You have to kind of put your own wrappers around it today to expose that to you. And applications today certainly have that ability. Certainly, I spoke with a client earlier this month that they've been working on trying to get a stacking tool to actually be the way they wanted the stacking tool to use. So stacking is basically going to show all your building, all the leases by floor, and be able to see who owns what. And if you highlight one, you should be able to get all the lease information, rent per square foot, CAM recoveries, all that data in one place. And there's commercial applications out there that do that, but they weren't convinced that they could get their lease abstract information into any of the vendors' tools. So they built their own. They grabbed all their lease abstract reports and all their leasing reports, put them in a common NLM, and to have a tool over it. And in 2 days, they built themselves a property stacking tool that their leasing agents and their are ecstatic about, because now they can just highlight something, be able to see lease end dates, they can see first right of refusals from the abstract, and have it all in one place throughout the whole portfolio. The portfolio is 25 million square feet, so they've got a lot of leases to worry about. Just a way to move that all into one place, and they've been trying to do this for years using a commercial application, never worked very cleanly, and here they put a relatively junior programmer on it, and in 2 days they came up with a system that they think is pretty good. Now, what's the security around it? What are the outcomes always correct? There's still stuff they have to, you still have to commercially make an application available to people. You need to be worrying about other things than if you're only building an AI tool for yourself. Doesn't necessarily have to take all those components into consideration.
What you first described about all the silos of data and so many systems, prop tech growing so much, is technology sprawl, right? System sprawl. It's everywhere.
Well, it used to be a stack. Now it's a stack, and it's getting wider and wider and wider. I'm not sure.
Wider and wider. And I love when a client actually does it themselves quickly. But the problem is the client is not a software developer, and when that person leaves, then they have an old system. It'll quickly become old because it won't be maintained. And the technology sprawl is creating an even larger gap that is an insurmountable problem. So I'm not advocating they not use the vendors. I'm just advocating that they drive the vendors' roadmap instead of accepting the roadmap. And solutions are great, but definitely, and you and I could probably have, and Drew, a whole nother show on this, definitely have to build a maintenance schedule for anything you build, because what you're paying for is maintained. Right?
You have to build security into the architecture. You have to there's Q&A that's got to be done. It's got to be, you got to maintain it on. And while the demise of the software company is AI is the demise of the software company, it's just not. The structure of designing and building the architecture, that's not something that you and I or the average person is going to run out and say, hey, technology guys, do this for me.
Exactly.
They're not going to take into the important things that we have to worry about too. And vice versa. Listen, I had a client call me a month and a half ago or so that said, hey, I want AI taken, I want Copilot taken off all my systems. I don't want people using AI. And my conversation started with, you think removing Copilot is going to stop them from using AI? I mean, they're just going to go use Gemini. They're just going to go use chat. They're going to go do something. If you don't help them use it, all you're doing is bringing the shadow IT into your organization and putting yourself at risk. So you should, instead of taking it off, try to deny it, like there'd be a buggy whip guy saying, cars are never going to be successful.
Give them the tools. Don't let them go find it on their own.
And they will, right? I mean, we know that, somewhere around 60% of employees are using AI in some way for their job. And just telling them they can't isn't going to stop them. And it's enhancing many of their lives. I mean, it's making their jobs better if being able to use these tools. As long as they don't believe them that they do hallucinate at times. You have to be careful, but as long as you're checking your results, you should be good.
Mike, when you think about the history of managed service providers' involvement in CRE over the years, how would you describe, or how do you think about that? Was there something that broke along the way that made MSPs more necessary than they used to be? Because what is it? How would you describe the introduction of MSPs in the first place? And then we'll talk a little bit about how that's changed over time.
Well, I think I'll go back to Bill's comment about the sprawl. I mean, the sprawl's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And as a owner operator, you can try to have somebody that does everything for you, but they probably can't. So you've got to find, how can I leverage what I have internally? What outside resources can we bring in to help? And it depends on the organization. We've got some small owner operators that we are their virtual CIO. I mean, we kind of drive their technology roadmap year over year. And there's others that we're just there to do help desk for, as their internal organization works on other projects for them. So I think it gives an owner operator some flexibility in how they use their own internal staff, and gets them exposed to maybe things that they wouldn't have seen in the technology arena, that, because we're wandering around in the wilderness by ourselves a lot, we see stuff that they're never going to see in the technology world.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and that flexibility, I mean, exactly what you're talking about, Mike, just plugging in, whether it be at a help desk only level or doing a more thorough engagement as an MSP for some of the clients. How do you see that slide occurring? I mean, where, MSPs, if not implemented or if not given the proper level of control, up or down, they might genuinely reduce risk, or they might actually introduce more abstraction and more risk and that sort of thing. So
I think it's
how
got
do
to
you
be
see?
I think it's got to be a conversation always between the MSP and the owner operators and the software vendors, that we're always thinking about what risk are we bringing into the organization and ensuring that risk is a level of risk that the owner is willing to take. There's some people that just have blinders on, and they'll running around with no EDR in their organizations, and they're okay with that. But most people want to know that they've got a good cybersecurity stack around them, that they've got good authorized use programs, they've got a good response plan, they've got strong backups that can be recovered from. So I think as the growth of MSPs in general has been, technology has become, everyone's a technology company today, right? We have more and more and more of this in our lives. So I think that we have to stay, as we go in, we try to make it a very consultative discussion of how can we help. If not every organization can we help it. Maybe it's just a time and material basis, but they're good at owning and operating real estate, and we're pretty good at technology. And I think that you stay in your lane, I'll stay in line, and we can help each other be successful.
I mean, to share a story from our side, what we've seen, the life cycle of a building, obviously you'll see management companies come and go, mergers, acquisitions, that sort of thing. And I mean, we even have one that's happening right now where the requirements change only because the logo of the company that's managing the place has changed, even though the people haven't, just the logo and the parent company. And so there might be some requirements that are in place. Whether or not they make sense doesn't necessarily matter, but that's just what their requirement is. And of course, I'm talking technical here. And so, we often influence those discussions to say, let's take a look at the requirements. What are the possibilities for those being met? What are the expenses? How can we very technically, but without getting too much into the weeds, how can we defend the security posture of the campus, which that's the ultimate goal, is to make sure that the security posture is correct and everything is addressed accordingly. So, I mean, it's really important, but it's, sometimes those assumptions are just kind of broad sweeping, and they lack a little bit of real analysis. And it's just interesting to see that change from company to company as management changes in a situation like that.
Yeah, and I think that as long as you remain in communication, I think that the one thing that we try to do with everyone is have regular conversations about this. We would say quarterly, we're always going to have a conversation with the customer, but anytime that you have a question about technology, I want you to pick up the phone and call me and ask. If you hear something that you're interested in, call me. Let's talk about it. It's a little harder because we're not walking down the hall and saying, "Hey, you got a second? Come on in." But that's what you want them to get to that point where, all right, listen, we're talking about this. Let's call Mike and see if he can lend any insight here.
What we see, Michael, is I'm going to play sarcasm here, as we see the new property manager come in without looking at anything in the stack, in the campus or the property, assume that everything needs to be refreshed and new, and if we spend money, we'll be covered.
Yep.
And a lot of the outside IT firms, or the IT, not OT, but IT inside of a new firm coming in, has a budget, and they love to buy new things, and they love to implement new networks and systems and devices.
Yeah, always love that.
And they're already there. Like, it's already mapped out for the next. That was put in on a 5-year plan, and you're only a year and a half in. Why do you need to refresh all this? You're talking about $50,000, $75,000, or $100,000 sometimes to redo the core of a network that is perfectly good. It has been pen tested, has et cetera, et cetera. But I'm baffled how many times they don't ask.
I actually had a conversation with the group last fall. They were just right of boom, so they had an event occur in the June timeframe. About 75 desktops had been attacked and ransomed, and they were still bruised. I started talking to them in August, September. They had been with their current MSP for 15 years. They liked them, but they felt uneasy without having somebody kind of watching over their MSP to make sure that there was enough layers of the onion skin covering up their data. So residential owner operator, they've got all kinds of PII on the network. They've got, it's just there's big exposure to the data. Hadn't been lifted, so they were just ransomed. There was no data taken, so that was okay. But now they were very worried that somebody was going to come and get their data. So they brought us in to just kind of say, let's talk about the tools that are here. What assessment can we make and what additional things can we do just to put a couple more layers of the onion skin around the heart just to make sure that we've got everything buckled down. And when I went in and looked, listen, they had a good tool set. It was, they had good AV, they had good EDR, they had a good MDR product. They were really sitting there pretty well. If you remember, SonicWall had an issue, and they snuck in through the SonicWall thing and was able to elevate a user to admin privileges, and were able to take advantage of the thing. Could the MSP have done something? Probably, but you don't know what exactly, because SonicWall isn't really very, very disgusting about it, and they said, if you just go change everybody's passwords, everything's going to be okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. But
well, that's you're talking about network and security risks, right? Can I go back to something you said earlier in the show here and revisit risk introduced by AI and AI tools?
Sure.
Like can we spend a minute on that? Because I think your experience there and do's, don'ts, or gotchas might really help the listeners. Like, we see operators introducing risk without realizing it, especially with the free tools and sensitive data. So what are you seeing in terms of teams using those with confidential information? Like you mentioned PII, but what about financials and some other things?
Yeah, so annually we do a data, we kind of do a scan of all data on the network just to see, is there stuff that's in common areas that should be put into areas that are encrypted. And we found that one of the things we started testing for was data that was sent to AI engines. And we found that this one client had actually uploaded their financials to the free version of ChatGPT 504 times. Now, they loved the reports they were getting, all these comparisons they were doing and the questions they could have. They thought it was great. They said, but guys, there's no security around this. Your data became part of the model, and they had no idea that what that meant. And now, would you have to write a pretty good prompt to go find it and be useful? Yeah, probably. But you don't know what, particularly with all this, as this technology is faster and faster and better, you don't know what you've left out there. But yeah, they were running multi-year financials, and they were using chat to do comparisons, and they had no idea that it was 504 times. So we kind of taught them of how they can do this without exposing it to the general public. Did another one at the same time and found their employees' census reports for insurance purposes. We found multiple spreadsheets on the system that they had done. Somebody in HR had sent to the last 2 years to do a comparison between their census from last year and the census this year, and the cost differences of their insurance. And chat's really good at doing some of that stuff. If you write a prompt and ask the right questions, but now you've just sent up every employee's address, social security number, and in a spreadsheet. So that wouldn't be all that hard to find if I went looking for it. So I think
a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, I found, in doing research on our competitors using a paid LLM, I found, and Drew's nodding his head because he knows what I'm going to say, a document that was a strategy marketing document for our company that one of our vendors put up there. I actually found where it came from. And we no longer use that vendor. We terminated the contract because it was specified in the contract. You can't put this up in a free LLM.
Yeah.
This is not to be disclosed. Like, this is strategic proprietary information.
And everybody should be writing that kind of things into contracts with their contracts with their customers and their clients.
We have paid accounts for all employees, and if they use a free account with any client or anything else, it's terminable. It's a terminable offense, no warnings. Like, here are the free tools. Now, they're not free. Here are the paid tools. Privacy and all of our rules applied. It's not that difficult to set up. It was very straightforward.
Well, I hate to use the word guardrails,
and everybody has tools now. So
yeah, it hates to use this word guardrails because I think it was getting overused. But you do have to put some guardrails around this stuff, and it's not all that difficult to build your own NLM and have it inside your firewall and protect it from and use what it needs to use outside.
Well, that's what we do now, Michael. That's what we do now. But a year and a half ago, that was a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and in a year and a half from now, it's going to be like you'll just think it and it'll happen for you.
yeah, probably. So relative to commercial real estate, a property or portfolio, and I want both of your opinion on this, because Drew is so very technical, right? Where does the responsibility sit to apply both security and AI guardrails? Like, is it at the operator, the project manager? Is it at IT, in the owner's IT, or is it in the ownership group? Where's the responsibility?
All those people's responsibility. I think ultimately this will all
Who's in
play
charge of it? Put it that way.
I
Who's
still
driving
think
the bus?
that I think whoever within an owner's organization is responsible for risk, and that's going to be, the CFO, controllers, someone at that level. Maybe somebody actually in risk who has the title of risk management has to be responsible for this kind of activity. But ultimately, we are all responsible for this stuff. But who's going to get sued? It's going to be management that's going to end up getting sued, right? And looking for someplace else to get sued. I mean, in New York State, with the New York Shield Act, every PII record that you lose, you could be fined $5,000 for. So in this case of this operator we have in the city, they sent up about 150 records in 2 different spreadsheets. So 300 records times 5K. That's a pretty good slap on the hand. And if you fail if you know and you fail to report it to the Attorney General, they can fine you up to $250,000. So it's the only way the government knows how to teach us to do something is to fine us if we don't do it, or fine us in the kitchen. That's how they justify all this stuff, right? Here's your carrot, and it's that you're not going to get the stick.
Drew, how would you answer the question? Where do you think the responsibility lies?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I was going to say I like what Mike said there about whoever owns the risk. But it's interesting because as I think about our various clients and then all of that activity that we see with multi-tenant, let's just say commercial tenants and commercial spaces, those conversations are usually had with discerning tenants. Not all tenants ask, but many do, and as they all should. So oftentimes, from OpticWise's perspective, it really is in that vein of a picture is worth 1,000 words kind of thing. A lot of times we lead with that information to say, here's how we ensure that security exists in this multi-tenant property that we have designed that has all these awesome features associated with it. You should be asking about security. Here it is. So it just goes right in there with those. And oftentimes it's just like, oh, wow, that's amazing. We'll look at it. And we don't hear another thing. Sometimes the conversations will go deeper. So, I don't think that's the right way that it should be. It shouldn't be left to tenants, but I will say that's where most of the chatter comes from. I don't see it often coming from management. They're kind of busy doing those day-to-day things and just assuming everything's okay because everything's okay.
And I'm in there with a can and a stick pounding. I say, hey guys, you got to listen to me over here. You're going to get in trouble unless you get your arms around this thing.
Well, I agree that with you, Michael, the CFO is very effective, but a lot of times the ownership groups don't have necessarily a CFO. It'll be a general partner. They might have somebody on staff to do it, but the GP or the CFO is typically the most reactive, most willing to take accountability for this issue. I mean, I want to make the point that this is not AI hype. AI is accentuating the problem. This is a high signal, real world risk conversation that ties directly to control of data and
AI just a piece of it. I mean, look at these emails that we're seeing now. I've seen some come in for me that there's an embedded invoice in the email. And if you look at the trail, it looks like this conversation is occurring between people and the email addresses are the same, are proper, and the writing's good. And all of a sudden it looks like this is a legitimate email. It's a $52,000 invoice attached to that I'm requesting my AP people to pay immediately. We're not going to pay that invoice immediately. They're going to come running in and go like this. But many people they'll process that stuff and it'll go on its merry way. I've had one client
they use natural language processing, listen to this podcast, and then write an email that sounds like me and Drew and send it to employees within our own company. We had to train our employees zero trust. Start with no.
That's right. Yeah,
this isn't right. We're not going to ask you to pay an invoice for us. We have systems for that. We have approval process.
I think Reagan said trust and verify, and now it's verify and trust, right? It's verify the identity before you trust anything. I think Reagan was one with a little trust in it, but we're going to verify that.
Well, we have to reverse that today. Appreciate you spending a few extra minutes on that, because I know a lot of people, not just our listeners, a lot of people that we talk to don't understand the risk in actually using AI. And if you set it up right, there is no risk, right? There's manageable risk, put it that way.
Yeah,
If you don't, then
no
there
risk is
is
hard.
exponential
There's
risk.
always risk,
There's
but you
always
can
risk.
minimize
Yeah,
them.
I did fix that statement, but there's
Yeah.
exponential risk if you don't.
Yeah. Well, I think that, we see it from the insurance companies. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, 5 years, 7 years, that an application for cyber insurance was 8 questions, 10 pages, single piece of paper.
Yeah.
Do you have a firewall and do you have AV? It's kind of was the thing, all they had to do. Now you've got 10 and 15 page applications. They want to know the vendor. They're much more.
We have to fill those out every year.
Yeah, we have much
see 'em all.
deeper into it. But it's one of the questions I think you have to ask your vendors. Do you have cyber insurance? What are your limits? How are you going to
Get an accord statement.
protect us as your customer through those things too?
And we have to, as a service provider on many facilities across the country, we have to fill those out and provide insurance statements every year.
Yeah.
It's just part of the contract. So I would encourage everybody to really consider that.
Well, and don't listen to your broker. Your broker says just say yes to everything, and as soon as there's a breach, the first question the forensics guys are going to ask are, let's see your application. Wait a minute, you said you did MFA and you don't do MFA, or not everyone did MFA. You can't say, well, most people did MFA. No, everyone must do MFA. So you just have to make sure that whatever you say on that application, you actually do throughout the term of the policy. Yeah. Because the first thing the forensics guy is going to do is try to find a way out of paying you. And they're going to see they want to see if you kept all those things that you said you're going to do, you're actually doing them. So one of the things we try to help people with is ensuring that the controls that they put in place remain in place throughout the year.
All right, Mike, this is good. Before we wrap up, we always like to take our guests up to what we could call the extra floor. So it's just a quick there's 3 questions in this case.
Okay.
Just gut level. It's not conversational like we've done so far. Just short answers, whatever comes to your mind. Number 1, what is the best piece of career or life advice that you think you might have ever received?
Always be a learner. I think I had my first boss out of college. I was working at a bank in the branch organization, and he brought me into his office and said, Mike, I'm 35, my boss is 54. You want my job, I want his job. This is not changing for a long time. I want you to go talk to this gal I know who happened to be on Headhunter for Wall Street, and she got me a job working for then Lehman Brothers. And Dick Fold, who actually was the CEO when that organization collapsed, was my boss at the time, and he was the one that said you always have to be learning something new every single day. Yeah.
Well, what's a habit or practice that consistently makes you more effective besides always be learning?
I'm gonna hate to say this, but I keep a paper day timer. And that's where my to-do list is, where all my meetings are, and where all my notes are for that day. I've got stacks of them around my office for the last 7 years, because if the IRS ever asks a question, I got something I can show them. But it keeps me focused on the things I need to do by having that list move along with me day to day. And if something starts getting stale, I got to figure out why it's getting stale and not getting done.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, shoot, in this day and age, having a thing or two that's analog is not a bad thing.
Yeah, it kind of keeps your feet on the ground.
Exactly. Okay, final question here. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I am an early bird. I'm up before 5 every day, and I'm asleep by 10:30 every night.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think I get more done between 5 and 8 than I get done the rest of the time. Focused work. Most of the rest of the time, I'm putting out fires, answering phones, talking to customers. I get to get what I need to really get done from a work standpoint from 5 to 8. Then the phone starts lighting up.
Well, we will put your information in the show notes, but please tell the listeners how they can contact you.
Sure. My email address is mmullin@ibsre.com. And certainly if you have any questions or need any help with anything perplexing, I'll certainly give you some time.
Well, Michael, thank you. Mike,
thank you, guys. It was great.
Yeah, thank you, our listeners and everybody out there. Be sure to like and share and subscribe and follow and all the things that would really help get the message out. And share it with some friends, send them an episode and tell them why you liked it. And welcome to the Peak Property Performance Movement. Thank you, everyone.
Very, very cool. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks all.